Alright guys, Kremp again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day. So far, Rostermania may be back on the menu just a couple of weekends before Major 2 in Dallas, with Felo and potentially Huke as well picked up to the league over the last couple of days. Which teams might be involved here? Falcons, yes, they're the worst, but apart from that, Gentlemates and OpTic are the two weakest teams in the league as it stands. Have either of these teams made a change? If they have, what does that actually look like in terms of which players might be gone from the team? Is there anything going on here that we need to really think about over the next couple of days? Very much into your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I greatly appreciate it. Starting just with a nice little 1v3 here from aBeZy. Lots of 8s going down over the last couple of days. Notably, Dashy, Huke, Illy, of course, on the same team. Did raise some questions because of what we have previously seen with the OpTic team in previous years, and whether OpTic and whether Huke's going to come back, whether anything is actually going to be going on there, because we know that OpTic have had some success with Huke in the past. They got rid of him for Pred for a reason, but Huke has not as yet gone to any other team in the CDL, although there have been rumours about that as of last night, as we shall get into. And the stats obviously aren't pretty. I mean, we were running the Dope Check show the other day, looking through some of the stats on the website, and it's worse than I thought it was, right? Like, these are numbers for this stage, so the qualifiers so far in Major 2 and the minor. And in terms of overall KD, Kenny is 50th out of, I mean, there's only 48 players, but, you know, a couple of changes happen here and there. Super comes in for a series, stuff like this. Kenny is 50th in a 48-player league. Shotzzy's only 40th. In Control, Kenny's 49th, but the only player worse is Super, and he literally played one map of Control. So, effectively, Kenny's the worst in that mode. In Search and Destroy, Shotzzy's the worst in terms of pure KD, and in Hardpoint, Dashy's the worst. So, you know, it's kind of crazy, and even Pred, okay, he gets excluded from being the worst in any category, but he was 48th in Search as well. So yeah, just very confusing, right? Like, people are going to say, oh, it's a Kenny problem, and yeah, Kenny is an issue for sure. The way that he's playing looks very uncomfortable. But it's not like it's just Kenny, and maybe you could argue that if Kenny was playing better, the entire team would be catalyzed to be better than they presently are, and maybe that's true as well. But it's like, it's a problem all across the board. I think the Dashy one is especially interesting because at the start of this season, I was genuinely thinking Dashy this year was going to be an MVP candidate. You know, I knew the SMGs were going to be good, but I thought the top ARs will stand out. Dashy was so good at BO4, BO6 is coming around, Hacienda's coming in. You know, Scrappy's, his numbers in this game in terms of pure KD aren't as maybe as crazy as they've been before, but he is teaming with HyDra, Envoy and Ghosty now. But Scrappy has still been right up there, best AR in the game. Cellium's right up there. Dashy started the year right up there. He was on fire. Recently, he's not been as good. And sure, he was the only man really keeping OpTic alive in that series against Toronto that they eventually got 3-0'd in. But it's interesting in terms of what it means for OpTic's hardpoint that Dashy has the lowest KD in that mode in the league right now, because, you know, there's clearly a big issue there. If Dashy's your guy, meant to be setting up on hills, meant to be setting up on head glitches and just getting free kills, if he is struggling, probably indicates there is no map control from any direction for the rest of his teammates, and therefore he's having to watch like 3-4 different lanes at once. That never ends well, even for a guy with that level of talent. Now, we will talk about the Falcons real quick. Obviously, people are going to be like, all right, well, who cares anymore? But their team looked maybe the best when Khhx was there. He was probably the player that looked the best on their team. He's still sitting pretty at a 1.19 KD this year. But of course, he only played a couple of series, and then he went back home to Saudi Arabia for reasons unknown. It's not really been said. The org hasn't said. I don't know how many people really know. And we're hoping that he might come back, because people often say when they look at Falcons, they say, oh man, like they could have won that, or they were kind of close to winning that. And maybe with King, I think King's pretty good. With maybe Xnid, Khhx, +1, maybe, you know, bring King a body back, right? Then maybe their team could at least have some higher potential. Now, it was noted that Khhx was actually playing in the Saudi leagues. This was a game from the 1st of March, so a couple of days ago now, and he was spotted playing in this game. So he is playing COD right now, even tournament competitive COD, in Saudi. But, you know, so maybe that's a good sign, because maybe he's back, right? And therefore potentially coming back over to America to play. That could be a possibility. Right now, we're not really sure, but I wanted to give that update as well. But let's talk about the other part of Rostermania, which frankly is more interesting from, you know, more competitive teams, and that is OpTic and maybe the Gentlemates. So it's been a big question, why has Huke not been picked up again? Until just a few days ago, Huke still had the OpTic affiliate badge on his Twitter. That's now gone. one. So Huke's clearly not on OpTic. He is on their website still, but I imagine they just haven't updated it. So yeah, Huke, where's he going to go? Why, after being dropped by OpTic post Major 1, has he not been signed? We thought that he might do. I mean, look, Huke and Neptune have been considered similar players before. Incredible pace on the map, you know, decision making might at times be a question mark, but incredible gun skill, maybe better online than LAN. You know, there's a feeling that, well, people were calling Neptune B-Tech Huke, or like, I don't know, Huke is Pack-a-Punch Neptune, whatever you want to say. Like when it was a consideration for Surge to sign Neptune, they were having to really think about it because they were going to get Nep, but then Huke was available, and then they were really considering getting Huke instead, but they decided to stick with their guns, get Neptune, and that's worked out very well. But with Neptune frying as he is, and Huke was frying as well when he was in the league, certainly online, his KD was one of the highest in that stint that he had on OpTic. Him and Shotzzy had some of the highest KDs in the entire league. How times have changed there. But Huke was not signed after that happened. It was confusing maybe because people were like, well, you know, you might have expected it, and sure, maybe he's waiting until after Major 2, maybe other teams are waiting till after Major 2, certainly possible, but it raised the question, could Huke go back to OpTic maybe? Is that something they've got in their back pocket, just in case it's necessary? But Huke was spotted in a chat channel here. Now, look, I don't really know exactly what this might mean, but this is on his stream, and his chat channels, he has 04's channel, of course 04 on Surge, like he's not going there, and then LAG, presumably for the Los Angeles Guerrillas Gentlemates roster, although, you know, who knows, could be, you know, lag, could just be lag. I mean, maybe lag don't refer to themselves as LAG, maybe they call themselves Gentlemates or whatever, who really knows. But it did raise some questions as to whether Huke is getting drafted in by that team, and certainly if there is a team making a change right now, the most likely to me is that Gentlemates roster. Their season is a bit of a shambles as it stands. OpTic, you know, as much as they may need a change, I certainly think they need to change something. Like, I would change the roles around first, but frankly, I would have done that 2-3 weeks ago, and OpTic didn't, and, you know, now it might be very difficult to justify not making an actual roster swap. So that's the Huke question mark. We'll get back into that in a second. The other tweet that hit the timeline yesterday, though, was from Felo. So Felo said, live with scrims, scrimming, of course, with the Omit Brooklyn team, and against Illy's team, against FaZe Clan, as he says, and that's what was happening there. Now, shortly afterwards, later in the day, he then tweeted this out, which is not the classic contract signing gif, but it's certainly up there. We've got the Andy Murray signing the camera thing. So, is there anything happening here? We obviously get some replies. Brother, you're not going back to the CDL. And Felo says, you know, you're so mad at another person's life. I don't know, probably joking around a bit. Having a bit of fun on the timeline, it looks like. But people are like, oh, here goes Felo again. He's baiting, right? He's baiting. You know, there's no way he's going back in. Who would sign him? Why would they do it now? Why wouldn't they have done it a couple of days ago? But to be fair, Felo has been a player who's obviously done a great job in challenges this year, helped with Lunas, helped with Neptune, getting those guys into the league. Veteran player, you know, leadership qualities, and I think there's certain teams in the league that might benefit. I was talking for some time about the Minnesota Rocket team as to whether that made sense there. The Geo, Estriel, Nero trio, very solid. Paulex, you know, downs and some ups, but, you know, obviously not an ideal start to the season for him. He was better on LAN for sure, and then he played a bit better, but his most recent series he had a 0.8 against. People were like, oh, maybe it's time to get Felo in. He can help with the leadership and, you know, keep them on the right path going forward, help them improve. Felo's played a lot of Challengers COD, of course, this year, so there were questions there, but also questions with OpTic, right? Because Felo can effectively flex. He would potentially come into that kind of leadership flex role. And there are some teams that may benefit from that. And of course, OpTic were considered among that conversation. But people were still like, he's probably just joking around. He's probably just baiting. There's no way anything's actually happening here. But then it was confirmed that Khhx is going to that team instead. Now, Khhx has been in a bit of a controversy over the last few days, let's say, because he made those comments about, I'm not sure how much more of this I can take, right, grinding in challenges, and his numbers aren't as good as his PR, let's say. And Zoom and Ben were kind of talking about it and saying, look, you know, he can improve and do better and really prove himself, but, you know, maybe it's time to do that now. So Khhx says, I haven't accomplished anything yet, but I will. Join Omid as content and competitive player for the team. So it's going to stream, but also obviously be a player on their roster as it stands. So this hasn't been confirmed who Khhx is replacing in the team. Presumably he's replacing replacing someone, and, well, it's obviously raised further fuel to the fire that he's coming in for Felo, because Felo's getting called up to the league. Even they tweeted this out on the 1st of March. Would Tifa look better in purple or green? Because, you know, realistically, there are 2 candidate teams for his services as it stands. Now, according to people that were watching Shotzzy's stream late last night, he was not implying that it's going to be OpTic. It may be, who knows, maybe the Warlord's keeping things under wraps. If I had to guess, I would say probably not OpTic, more than likely another team. You know, I feel like if OpTic were going to do something, I don't know, OpTic usually we don't hear too much about it, but I also think that from the OpTic side, if Felo's like, oh, he's, you know, signed to the league, would Felo really do a contract signing thing for OpTic? You know, I don't know. I kind of doubt it personally, and I don't think that's what's going to happen yet. Maybe, but we'll see over the coming days. And maybe it is just bait and there's nothing happening yet. I guess we'll see. But there are teams that probably do need a move. These are the standings as it stands. We talked about the Falcons. Gentlemates are probably the team that needs a change the most. It's just a bit of a question as to what they might actually do. Of course, it's no longer Skyz, it's Priestahh in the lineup here, but yeah, it's been a shambles for these guys. They're way behind the curve. Lynz isn't going anywhere. They've only just picked Luna's up. But as we know, Felo and Luna's had a great success together in challenges. So there is a bit of a thought there as to whether you say, all right, Skyz, all right, Priestahh, it's been a pleasure, but we're moving on from you guys. We're bringing Felo in. We're going to run Felo, Luna's, Lynz, and Kismet. Maybe that's the plan. But then you might say, well, is Huke joining or not? Is this rumor true that Huke might be getting involved? Because if that was to be the case, then what would you do? Because, yeah, as I say, you might think that Lynz isn't good enough and it's time to go and all this. I don't think so personally. I think Lynz can be part of a team that is far better than this. I think we've kind of seen that in the past. It's just this whole roster has been a shambles, and the way that it's been handled hasn't been good either. And Kismet's been their best player, so you're not really getting rid of him. So, look, if I had to guess what this move was, you're probably thinking Felo in here somewhere, and then working out from there. But it's not impossible that it could be something else. I mean, Rocker are sitting 5th in the league right now, so it seems premature for them to make a change, but this was the one roster that we've been looking at for some time and saying, well, if you put Felo in this team, maybe that could help them in some way. But their upcoming games, let's have a look at who they play. So they play FaZe this upcoming weekend, and then Thieves and Surge after that. So wow, Rocker have probably literally the hardest possible run to close out their stage. And this stage so far, they're 3-1, only lost to the Ravens. But they played Falcons, OpTic, and Heretics in there. And of course, they did lose at the minor as well. So if Rocker were to go 0-3 in that run, they would, be in a difficult position, let's say, for seeding for the major tournaments. So there is that. Surge aren't making a move. Miami certainly aren't bringing in Felo. Boston, it's not impossible for Boston, to be fair. Like, I know that people have been talking Gorillas and OpTic, but Boston do need some improvement on the AR side. That's where they've really been struggling. And maybe some leadership too. So, who knows, Boston Felo, maybe when we're talking about like the tweet that we saw a second ago, wherever it was, would he look better in purple or green? Maybe we're talking Boston green rather than OpTic green. And obviously people are going to say, oh, well, it's time for Felo, for Kenny and all this. And look, at the end of the day, would a change be something that OpTic need to consider? Yes. Is Felo the right man? I'm not so convinced, but yeah, intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. This is where it currently sits. The reality is we don't really know. We've not heard any leaks about this really over the last couple of days as to where Felo is going, if anywhere, but there are certainly teams that probably need a move and need a move in that type of role, in that leadership flex AR role where Felo's been very impressive and competitive with multiple teams over certainly this year so far and helping a load of players get even better. That may be a role that is worthwhile considering. So intrigued to your thoughts as ever in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.
Let's go, Thomas. Let's go, baby.
Wow. Okay, I'm back.